Well, that was something. After all that hype and all that buildup, the Ducks wind up retaining their third pick, and nobody moved in this year's NHL Draft Lottery. We'll talk about that and who the Ducks should be looking for on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jason JD Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for over a decade, also the public address voice for the Coachella Valley Firebirds, and have also contributed to Defend the Nest, which covers the San Diego Gulls. And just want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. The fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes, like unique stickers for trading and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go now on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, so we got a bit to get to on this episode. It was Draft Lottery Day, and in case you missed it, the Anaheim Ducks remain at their number 3 pick for the 2024 NHL Entry Draft, which is taking place next month at the Sphere in Las Vegas. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Sphere, it went viral a couple of weeks ago. I don't know how many saw it when Fish played there. And now we have the NHL Draft taking place at the Sphere. This is the first big event of the offseason for the National Hockey League. And to have it at a venue like the Sphere is going to be truly amazing. So we're looking for that in about a month and a half. But as far as the draft lottery is concerned, there was absolutely no movement. And this after the Ducks had 22.7% to move up in the draft. They had about 70% to move down in the draft, and neither of which happened. So here is the breakdown of the picks. The number 1 pick goes to the San Jose Sharks, to the relief of everybody outside of Chicago. I know last season Ducks fans are still understandably ticked off. I get it. I do get it. But they're still a little bit ticked off over what happened last year. Let's go back to this time last year, shall we? Okay. This time last year in 2023, the Anaheim Ducks had the best odds to retain the number 1 draft pick, and they didn't get it. They moved down to number 2 and missed out on the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. I get it. I do get it. I'm not going to look back on that too much. So looking back at this year, there was understandably some pessimism that the Ducks would fall down in the draft. There was a lot of pessimism that they would go down to 4th or even 5th. Yes, I saw the comments. Yes, I saw the tweets from a lot of loyal listeners, a lot of everydayers that were singing the doom and gloom that the Ducks were going to be 4th or they were going to be 5th, and they're going to be cursed again because that's the Ducks. They are cursed in this NHL draft. Look, I get that. I get that the Ducks have never won the draft lottery. I get that the Ducks have never moved up in the draft. Yes, you heard that right. In the 31 years, oh my God, it has now been 31 years, and the Ducks have never moved up in the draft lottery. They've moved down every time, most notably last year when they went from 1st to 2nd. They moved down the year before when they got Mason McTavish. New Jersey moved up in that draft back in 2022. So Ducks fans, they're used to this. They're absolutely used to this. Oh, how about them moving down in, 2020 when the New York Rangers won the first overall pick? This after some weird bubble draft, whatever the heck that was. Even though the New York Rangers made the bubble, they still somehow moved from the 8 to 15 slot to the number 1 overall pick So the Ducks moved down a spot. Yeah, we remember that, right? Oh, then they also moved down in 2019. But I'm going to just stop with all the history. I'm going to stop with that because it's not just the last 5 or 6 years. It's not just every time I've talked about this on Locked On Ducks that they've moved down. I will give a silver lining. I will try to give a silver lining. At least this is the first time in 3 years that the Ducks did not move down. At least. Try to find the silver lining with me, folks. At least they didn't move down. Oh. But anyway, looking back in prior drafts, because why not? The Ducks have a third or better pick. This is now the 5th time in team history that they have a third or better pick. Let's go back in time. Let's do that. All the way back to the second ever draft, all the way back in 1994. The Ducks had the second overall pick, and they selected Oleg Tverdovsky with the number 2 pick. Oleg did play with the Mighty Ducks for a while. He was there in Anaheim for a few seasons, then went to the Coyotes, or went to the Jets/Coyotes, then came back to Anaheim. Would you believe that Oleg Tverdovsky is a 2-time Stanley Cup champion? Yeah. 2003 with the bad guys, the New Jersey Devils, and then 2006 with the Carolina Hurricanes. So, hey, the number 2 overall pick wound up being a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. Just not with the Ducks. Sorry, Ducks fans. My apologies to bring that up. Then let's go back to 2005. The Ducks missed out on Sidney Crosby. Yeah, that one still hurts. They just missed out on Sidney Crosby, wound up with the number 2 pick, and wound up drafting Bobby Ryan, who was good for a while with the Anaheim Ducks. So that wasn't a terrible pick for Anaheim. So Bobby Ryan going number 2. Then we jump ahead a little bit because the Ducks won a bunch of divisions. They didn't have high draft picks for a while. And then everything just kind of happened and fell apart. The last time the Ducks picked number 3, just 2021, that recent. The Ducks selected Mason McTavish with the number 3 pick. So at least there's some history, some decent history for having a number 3 pick. It's only happened but once. Yeah, this will be their second number 3 pick. They've had 3 number 2 picks. And of course, last year they selected Leo Carlsson with the second overall pick. Much to the chagrin of some Ducks fans. I understand that. And I understand that there are still some fans that are saying, yeah, we love Leo Carlsson, but, just imagine if they had gotten Fantilli. Okay, look, let's stop this right now. The Ducks got Leo Carlsson, and he has been fantastic with the Anaheim Ducks this season. I was perfectly okay with that draft pick. In fact, I even said in a podcast maybe a week before the draft that the Ducks couldn't do no wrong with either Fantilli or Carlsson. And I was fine with that. And this year, there is definitely a bunch of players that the Ducks are going to look at. And there are 2 players in particular that I'm kind of keeping my eye on for this year's NHL draft. So what we're going to do is we're going to head to the first intermission right now. And then I'll talk about a couple of those players that the Ducks could potentially be targeting with the number 3 overall pick in this year's NHL draft. Stay locked in. Now a brief word from Monopoly Go. That is right. You can team up with friends for timed tournaments. And I know what you're saying. Okay, you've already talked about that. I get it. I've talked about it. But there's just so much great stuff in this game because you could play with your friends and work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers. You can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces like the dog piece. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges from new locales like Las Vegas. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on, folks. Game on. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, you're locked in with Jason JD Hernandez, and we're talking everything draft. And I want to go over a couple of the players that I've been eyeing. One of them I've been eyeing for about a month, and I've already talked about maybe a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I think a couple weeks ago was when I last mentioned this. So I'm going to start with, I think, who I personally want to see the Ducks get in this draft, and that's Artyom Levshunov out of Michigan State University. He's a Spartan. He's from Belarus. He's a pretty decent bodied defender, 6'2", about 200 pounds. And what I like about Levshunov, tremendous skating ability. In fact, one of the best skaters, if not the best skater in this year's draft. The Ducks have had a penchant for drafting defensemen that are very good skaters. We're looking back at Jamie Drysdale a few years ago. We're looking back at Olin Zellweger, who still glides on the ice. Still one of my favorite players to watch in person. Pavel Mintyukov, who is also a tremendous skater, but also has some very adept just shooting skills. So I like Minty a lot. Zellweger, I've been very, very high on, and especially for a early second round pick, I still feel like the Ducks got a steal in that draft back in 2021. Oh, and incidentally, the Ducks also will have the 35th pick in this year's draft, because now we've added the Seattle Kraken. So now the Ducks once again have an early second round pick. There's a lot of defensemen out there, but as far as great skating defensemen, Levshunov, I think, just works really well on his edges. His lateral movement is among the best in this year's draft class. Tremendous movement, tremendous just on his edges, can move laterally, and can work a power play very well. Now, I don't know if the Ducks are going to put him in the power play just yet, if they choose to go this route. So that's someone that I'm high on him. I'm very high on him. Very mobile, very good offensive defenseman. He manipulates passing lanes. He gets shots through traffic with great ease. And from some of the highlights that I've seen, he has a tendency to just put the puck towards the net and see what happens. Already, that is someone that the Ducks are going to want this season. Someone to put pucks towards the net. Someone that you're going to want to see get some C&I shots. Look, this is a league of skill. This is no longer a league of just bruising and just, hitting guys. This is a league of skill. This is a league of speed. This is a league of good skating. Levshunov possesses those tools that are fine-tuned for the current NHL. You need someone with speed. You need someone to have a good touch. Defensively, still raw defensively, still has a little bit to work on defensively. But still, you want someone to put pucks towards the net. You want someone that is going to look for a good pass. Something that I didn't mention last time is his ability to find open lanes. Because of his skating ability, he will go from east to west on the power play, or he will go from east to west, oftentimes shifting with his D partner, which is mostly good. You want that movement in your offensive zone. The Ducks over the last 4 to 5 years have had a bad tendency to stay stagnant when they have the puck in the offensive zone, especially in the power play. Now, again, I don't know if the Ducks are going to put someone like him on the power play right away. But in general, You want someone that is going to cause movement on the defense. You don't just want to have all 5 players standing still the whole time and just pass the puck back and forth between defensemen. You do not want that. You want to force movement. You want to force the defense to kind of scramble a little bit. And pretty much every good highlight that I've seen from Levshunov, because he moves laterally, but also he has a tendency to move north-south and move up and down. A very good 200-foot skater, but also, and he's done this a couple times late in the season with Michigan State, is he will sometimes move up and all of a sudden play in F3 for some reason, but he does move up and even get as close as the face-off circles, and even once in a while, he'll have an adventure and get all the way up to the red line. So I think that's what I like the best, is the movement. Yeah, that's the best thing. There's one other player that I'm looking at right now, and if the Ducks want to go this route, I also would not be upset at all. And this is Caden Lindstrom from Canada. Yes, another Lindstrom in the draft. He has recently played with Team Canada. He is last with the Medicine Hat Tigers, and he's had a pretty solid year. At the time, he had 46 points in 32 games. Just another solid player, a great character player. That's what I'm going to say. One of the better character guys in this year's draft, and someone that I honestly could see fitting very well in Anaheim. In 32 games, 46 points. Also won gold with the U18 Canada team and the Linka Gretzky Cup earlier this year. So he's already got some great credentials. Now, I know he doesn't have the numbers that you would want from someone to go that high in the draft. Part of that is injury. Lindstrom did have a hand injury earlier this season, which forced him to miss quite a few games. Once he came back, he moved up like gangbusters. In fact, he was one of the biggest movers up the ranks in this year's NHL draft, because I could recall maybe 6-7 months ago, Caden Lindstrom was ranked as far down as like 11. For a while, I saw him at number 8 or number 9 in this year's NHL draft. So he still had a little bit of something to prove as far as some scouts were concerned. But some aspects of his game that I like, another good skater, someone that is going to play a complete 200-foot game, someone that is going to do very well defensively, one of the more solid defensive forwards in this year's draft. And he's also a big-bodied forward, 6'4", over 200 pounds. He's NHL ready. He's got an NHL ready body. At last check, he was, in fact, if I'm reading this correctly, 6'4", 216. He might be bigger than that. He might wind up being 6'4", 220. To have that kind of body and to have some pretty solid mobility for his size, again, in a league looking forward that is more skilled, you want someone with good hands. You want someone with mobility. But if you're also the Ducks, you want someone that is going to play good defensively on forward, because that's something the Ducks have been missing tremendously over the last few seasons, is someone that is going to play responsible hockey and help your goalies out. I know John Gibson, he's been begging for defense to help him out. Lukáš Dostal, he's been begging for the D to help him out. So either of those players, I think, would be good for Anaheim. Those are just two of the several names that I'm looking at. And with number 3, you've got a long list of choices. And I will say to all the Locked On Ducks fans, I do plan on profiling a bunch of prospects in the weeks leading up to the draft. So this is kind of a teaser for shows coming up. I'll look more in depth at Lindstrom. I'll look more in depth at Levshunov. I'll look more in depth at some of the other high picks, because I'm going to be honest, Celebrini is going to be number 1. I think Demidov is going to go number 2. That's why I'm not talking about him. I do think he's almost as good as Celebrini. And Chicago would be foolish to not take Demidov with the number 2 pick. So that's why I'm looking at the next set of guys. And just so you know, there are some other names that I've been looking at. I was looking at Anton Silayev. I was also looking at Cole Iserman from the USDP, someone else that I really like. So those are just some of the names that we're going to be talking about in future podcasts. But also, I like Hansa Helenius, just in case they want to go that route. And I will also be looking at picks hovering in the late 20s, early 30s. Why am I looking at those picks? Well, I will tell you why on the other side. And now, a brief word from FanDuel. It is the NHL playoffs, it is the NBA playoffs, and it is winner take all time with both those leagues in round 2 of their respective playoffs. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook and the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And please, folks, gamble responsibly. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, you're locked in with Jason J.D. Hernandez. The day of the NHL Draft Lottery, where the Ducks don't move up. They're officially going to get the number 3 pick in this year's draft. But I'm going to look on the bright side. At least they didn't move down. Silver linings. But we also got to talk about the NHL playoffs. And I will have a podcast later tonight breaking down the playoffs, looking at what the former Ducks are doing. One former Duck in particular is showing up big time in the playoffs. So that's a preview for later on. And we will hopefully have a show from Acrisure Arena, depending on time of game and depending on when it ends. I'm hoping to have at least one podcast from Acrisure this week. So stay tuned for that as well. Also, just wants to bring this up. This is the NHL playoffs. They're going to be ongoing. So I will be periodically talking about the NHL playoffs as well. Just because not only former Ducks in it, but also because, this is big news and it's a time of year that even Ducks fans are watching and maybe rooting for some former players. Who knows? But speaking of the playoffs, one series in particular that Ducks fans should be looking at is the series between the Edmonton Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks. That's a second round matchup with big implications for the Anaheim Ducks. Why is that? Let's go back to the trade deadline from this season. The Ducks traded away Adam Henrique, who, by the way, looks like he's not going to play in game 1 of this series. In fact, he's still injured. So that's kind of causing a bit of a stir. Adam Henrique not playing to start this series. We'll see when and if he comes back against the Canucks. That'd be a big loss for Edmonton on their depth line. But speaking of Adam Henrique, Sam Carrick also involved in that trade. And what did the Ducks get in return? Well, they got a first-round pick from the Oilers. But it might not be the pick that they want. As of right now, that pick would be number 24 in the draft. Number 24 as of right now. However, if the Oilers beat the Canucks in this series, that pick would drop to either number 29 or number 30 at best. The conference champion or the conference finalists get picks number 29 and 30, and the Stanley Cup finalists get picks 31 and 32. So as of right now, the pick could be number 24, or it could be 29, 30, 31, or 32 if the Oilers win the whole thing, if they win the Stanley Cup. Now, I know there's going to be a lot more Ducks fans that are not going to root for that. They want to keep that pick at number 24 because that would be at least a 5-pick, 6-pick drop. That's a massive drop off, folks. So to go from 24 all the way down, that's going to be tough. That's going to be really tough. Now, the Ducks have had some pretty decent luck with late first round picks. In the recent past, they did get Nathan Gauthier, who's looked good for the San Diego Gulls. Jacob Perreault, another pick. Braden Tracy, another late round pick. Looking back, Sam Steele, number 30 pick, who's now flourishing with the Dallas Stars. Shea Theodore, who's now out of the playoffs with the Vegas Golden Knights. Emerson Edom, currently the Ducks color commentator for Duckstream. Maybe not the best examples, but one other example, Kyle Palmieri, who was very important for the Ducks in their division runs. So there's at least some solid picks like late first round that the Ducks have had in the past, and those players were helpful in those long runs. So that's how the playoffs are going to affect the Ducks draft this year. Ducks fans, what are you hoping for? Are you hoping the Oilers get completely obliterated, or do you want to see former Ducks raise the cup? Do you want to see Corey? Do you want to see Corey Perry lift the cup for the first time in 17 years? What a story that would be! Just for the story, that would be cool. Do you want to see Adam Henrique raise the cup for the first time? Do you want to see Sam Carrick raise the cup for the first time? So still a lot that is going to be determined, but this one series has major implications. So Ducks fans, yeah, I would say tune in to Canucks versus Oilers. I will be talking about that series a lot more coming up on our next podcast. But for now, I think we're going to wrap it up. So once again, I want to thank you all for tuning in on this post-draft lottery reaction. We'll be back with another show later on, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, ad-free on Amazon. We're also on the YouTubes. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And speaking of YouTube, don't forget about the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, 366 this year, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So look for Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. You can follow me on the Twitter sphere. I still call Twitter at StimpyJD. Comme ça. You can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Ducks. And the mailbag is open, so continue sending your questions. I've already got a couple of questions in the back burner. So keep sending in your questions. I will answer them later on this week, hopefully. The email address is lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. And once again, thank you all for your continued support. It is so greatly appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason JD Hernandez saying have a great rest of the afternoon and evening. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together.